Chapter 2 of Adanna the Beauty. I always knew I was beautiful, from as early as I can remember. The first thing anyone would remark, even before asking for my name, would be Imaramao, or some other variation of praise for my beauty. I was born golden skinned like my maternal grandmother, and blessed with the luxurious lower back length hair my paternal grandmother has been renowned for in her days. I started off being self-conscious of my large saucer-like eyes, but later realized they were what attracted and intrigued people the most. From a very young age, I grew accustomed to both men and women tripping over themselves at the sight of me or having all conversations stop the minute I walked into a room. But my parents made sure none of it went to my head. Outside of the house, the parades and accolades were all fine and good. But the moment I stepped inside, it was drummed into my head that good grades, good behavior, good homekeeping, and humility were much more important. The same man who wants to kill himself because of your face is the same man who will throw you away when your breasts fall down. My mother would often quip. A woman who knows how to take care of her home is what men really want. My father had a less traditional reason. Beauty without brains is nothing, Ada. He would often say, this is the 90s. Son will be in a new millennium. If you study hard and get good grades, even the sky will not be your limit. He encouraged me to dream, and dream I did. I dreamt of being an engineer one day, maybe even an aerospace engineer working at NASA, all the way in the United States of America. Not particularly a small dream for a young girl living on Onisha with traders for parents. Ours was a modest life, but our parents had big dreams for my siblings and I. Big dreams we were all determined to fulfill. My younger brother, Adanna, wanted to be a cardiologist one day, and my younger sister, Adanna, fancied herself one day joining an Idols. Ruth Benamesia and Cien Alway Brown reading the news on TV. For the most part, we did live up to the expectation academically. We were all known and even teased for being overly studious and efficient. We studied hard and got good grades to show for it. In between school, church, domestic chores, and helping out our parents in the shop, we had little or no time to socialize. Ours was a simple life, a simple and happy one. It was the beginning of 1996, the year I turned 16, when one of my parents' biggest customers, a big bakery in Asaba, placed what was their largest order yet with plans to expand their bakery to Lagos and Benin. The typical orders were flour, sugar, and margarine had quadrupled. Understandably, my parents were very excited about this, and the prospect of similar orders from this customer, especially as I was on the verge of writing my final exams and going to university, was no longer simply something nice to talk about, but a stark reality, and with Adanna only a year behind me. The additional income would no doubt be very welcome. The day the customer was scheduled to pick up their order of 50 bags each of flour and sugar, as well as 100 cartons of butter and flavoring, I was at the store to assist our father with this large order. He had decided Adanna would be better off learning the skill during the holiday, so he was working with a mechanic near our house. Ahuna had taken ill, our mother was at home tending to her. It was a tense wait, and the persistent shake of my father's leg and his short temper with his staff were evidence of his nerves. My parents had taken a loan from a local loan shark to be able to buy so much stock, and if the customer decided against the purchase, it would spell big trouble for them. Habjawo. Hey, Bube, one of the shop assistants announced when the family truck pulled up in the front of the shop. They are here. That single announcement restored the store to life, and by the time Linus, the bakery stock manager, opted out of the truck, we were all primed and ready for him. Okay, you wanted to give me a heart attack, my father exclaimed, giving his long-term customer a playful punch on the shoulder. We've been waiting for you since. It's not like you to get here at this time. Biko, Ewelaiwe, don't be angry. It couldn't be helped. Linus apologized, gesturing towards the vehicle with his head. My father never wanted to catch any hint subtle or overt, blotted. Onye, is someone in the car with you? Linus rolled his eyes in expression just as a young man who looked to still be in his teens emerged from the truck. He smiled and bowed his head in greeting, an obvious testament to his good upbringing, but the slight pulse of his lips showed he had caught on to the unsuccessful non-verbal exchange between his companion and my father. Small oga, this is Mazi Okafo, and he's the owner of the shop. Linus muttered, Mazi, this is my small oga, Chief's last son. The way he stressed last born sounded more like an insult than a description. Linus, I'm not any Mazio. Don't give me any title I haven't earned. My father said with a nervous laugh. It's nice to meet a young man. Halicius is my name. It's nice to see Chief already has a good succession plan in place. I stood in a corner as the guy was introduced as Anayo. I noted how he looked very close to my own 16 years of age. As my father walked Linus into the inner storeroom, my eyes connected with Anayo's and I literally felt my heart stop beating. That was the moment, the very moment that I finally understood my mother's constant admonition for me to never lose my head over any boy. Because standing before this tall, lean, and honey-colored teenager, I knew I'd already lost my head. Do you work here? He asked, making me jump. Only during the holidays, I managed to answer, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked just like Ralph Trinvast, and the more I looked at him, the more I felt myself turn into butter. It's my dad's shop. He nodded in acknowledgement, but didn't look particularly surprised by that piece of information. You already know my name, but you haven't told me yours, he said, walking towards me with a smile on his face. I had to stifle a smile of my own as I saw the same admiration in his eyes that almost all members of the male species had around me, and I was never more pleased about the effect I had on men as I was that day. Adanna, I answered, feeling a bit more brazen now, whilst also regretting my simple choice of attire. An old dress so faded the floral patterns looked more like color stains. Adanna, he repeated, my name rolling off his tongue like very fine wine. That's a beautiful name. How old are you? Do you school around here? I was tempted to lie, but reluctantly decided telling the truth would be best, no matter what it cost me. 16, I answered, deliberately leaving out the name of my local secondary school, which I was sure you wouldn't know anyway. 16? Wow, you don't look 16, he said, visibly surprised, something I wasn't sure pleased or annoyed me. I am 18. I just finished from UDSS, University Demonstration Secondary School. When I looked blank, he added in Benin. Ngwano, Kanye came Linus' winning voice as seeing my father emerge from the store with our shop assistants bearing their goods. Let girls be going, Anayo, before they think I have sold you in the marketplace. Did you count every? Anayo began to ask, squaring up before his father's staff, his voice notably deeper. Linus let out an irritated hiss. Is it now that you'll be asking me questions? If you wanted to know if I come inside the store, come count with me now. Let us go, Joe. If you want to cross-check, feel free, Biko. Mazi, we have left. Grieve your wife for me. And just like that, Anayo was weeks away. I stood outside as the truck pulled out of the busy road, and I almost felt like running after it to have a few more minutes, just a few more minutes, talking with him. But instead, I stood there rooted to the spot, watching until their car turned onto the major highway and disappeared. How could God have sent someone like that my way, only to take me away so quickly? I knew better than to ask my father any question about when they would probably return to restock. So I kept my mouth shut and silently helped him balance his book. In the coming days, the euphoria from the successful transaction was overshadowed by a once continued failing health. What was initially suspected to be malaria was proving to be much more, as her legs were swelling inexplicably. My parents decided traditional medicine would be better for her. So my mother traveled with her to her hometown of Abatete, leaving me in charge of running our household. Between this and helping my father out at the shop, Anayo was really the last thing on my mind. Which is why when he showed up again a week later, it took me completely by surprise. It was a slow market day, and I'd been sitting on a stool, idly chewing gum and picking up my fingernails. When he suddenly appeared at the door, I was so shocked I almost fell off my stool. Outwardly though, my face remained stoic and expressionless. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing the effect he was having on me. "Hi, beautiful," he said, leaning over the counter so close I could feel his breath on my skin. I felt my face flush. "Hi, hello," I stammered back. "I didn't think you guys would be back to his talk so soon." He smiled, and the sight of his immaculate snow-white teeth made me feel lightheaded. Thank God I was sitting. He was truly the most handsome human being I had ever laid eyes on. "No, I'm here to see you." I looked at him, shocked. "Me? You came all the way from Asaba to see me?" "It's just a 30 minutes drive. I didn't have to take the night bus or anything," he chuckled, prompting a smile from me. "You've been on my mind ever since the last time you were here, and I just had to see you again." Deep in my heart, I knew this line of conversation was wrong. Very wrong. I knew this was kind of the thing I had been trained all my life to avoid. But the allure, the pull was the strongest I had ever experienced.
"Are you busy? Is your father around? Can I take you out for a quick drink?" he asked, leaning even closer. "Don't worry, I'll bring you back in no time." That was when I noticed the shiny black Toyota Celica parked outside and realized he had driven it there. This only made the temptation so much stronger. No, and I hesitated in answering the third question. My father has gone to his hostel in Aba, and I knew that I wouldn't be missed too much if I just went out for a little while. "Fine, but I have to be back soon," I finally said, with a quick glance at Ebube, who was fast asleep on a bench by the doorway. The other attendant, Ebenezer, had gone in search of lunch. He smiled like he did won the jackpot, and when he took my hand to lead me to his car, it sent shockwaves through my whole body. Getting into the flashy sport car, I hated that I was again underdressed. I wish I'd had an opportunity to properly prepare, to make an even bigger impression than I already had. But alas, there I was in a frayed corduroy skirt, faded football jersey, and rubber bathroom slippers. I suddenly felt like running out of the car. "Is there anywhere in particular you want to go?" "I don't know Nisha that well," Anaya said. I merely shrugged in response, trying to feign indifference, when in reality my insecurity was eating me alive. For the first time, I noticed his expensive-looking leather loafers and even more expensive-looking watch. I knew I was nowhere near his level. What did a polished guy like him want from a bush girl like me? Rather than being discouraged, it smiled and drove all the way to the GRA, to a bar nestled in a small boutique hotel. I did utter a word of complaint as they drive us to the other end of town, because even I wanted to be far away from the gossips in my neighborhood. Dealing with them would be a whole lot harder to handle than getting back a bit late. Walking into the eyebrow bar, there were few raised brows, and I knew it had less to do with my striking beauty and more to do with my unsuitable attire. But Anayan didn't seem to care, so I walked in with him with my head held high, baton slippers and all. Taking a seat beside him, I made sure to sit with my leg crossed and my back rod straight. I wasn't going to reflect on the outside how inadequate I was feeling on the inside. "My God, you're so beautiful," Anayo remarked as we waited for our drinks. I was worried that I'd exaggerated the beauty in my mind and then you won't be able to live up to it if I saw you again. But gosh, you are even more beautiful than I remember. I'm sure you hear this every day. A part of me wanted to tell him that truly I had been hearing it all my life. But another part of me wanted this to feel special and like something that was new to us both. "No," I answered, shaking my head. "Nobody has ever told me that." "I like you, Adanna. I really like you," he said, taking my hand in his. "I want us to be special friends." "Special friends?" I echoed, not quite understanding his drift. "I want you to be my girlfriend," he answered. "Adanna, I want to marry you." I was caught up in the moment, but not enough not to hear the flurry in his words. "Marry me? Is that how they marry?" I laughed at him. "You're just a teenager. Besides, we hardly even know each other." "I can court you," was emphatic aside. Answer: "We aren't too young to court. My late mother was probably about a year or two older than you, and now when she married my father." I placed my hand over his. "Anayo, there's no rush. Let's get to know each other first. I also like you, but let's take things slowly, okay?" This didn't quite satisfy me, but luckily he didn't say any more on the subject. And we were still chatting about our lives in general. He told me about being the youngest of the three children, even though the oldest was not from his mother. He told me about losing her at a young age and how that affected him growing up. I told him about my very strict upbringing and my NASA dreams, and before we knew it, we've been sitting, chatting, and drinking there for almost 4 hours. I have to go, Anaya said. It's getting late. My father will soon start looking for me. He nodded in agreement and understanding. I'll be back to see you in a few days. Then we can talk more. We walked back to the car, and just as I was about to get in, he pulled me into his arms and kissed me. It was completely unexpected, but I guess on a deeper level, my heart had been longing for it. As innocent as I was, I knew what a passionate kiss was meant to be like. Alongside my textbook and NASA literature, I was also an avid reader of Mills and Bone and Harlequin romances, and I'd fantasized over the day I would meet someone whose kiss would make me levitate. And levitate I did. As Anaya's kiss deepened, it felt like I was floating in air and never wanted it to stop. I better take you back before we do something we shouldn't. He groaned in my ear. I don't know how you've done it, but I'm completely crazy about you, Adanna. You're like a drug to me. I wanted to tell him I felt the same, and that being in his arms was making me doubt, question, and recalibrate my entire moral compass. I was ashamed to admit to myself that if he'd wanted to take things further with me, I might not be strong enough to refuse. But I knew I'd be better off not appearing so easy. One step after the other, Anayo, I said, disengaging from him and entering the car. Let's get to know each other first. The ride back to the shop felt shorter, and we made plans to see each other the following week. When we pulled up in front of the shop, he looked at me with longing. Can I kiss you again? Much as I wanted to say yes, I knew there was a high chance of being caught by one of the other traders in the vicinity. And the last thing my family needed was the scandal. So instead, I excused his name. Not right now, Anayo, when you come back. Can I at least have your phone number? He asked as I got out of the car. Again, my feelings of inadequacy rose to the fore. Our phone is not working, I lied, not being able to tell my family I'd never for once owned a telephone. I'll see you next week. Drive safely. And with that, I scampered away just like Cinderella would have at the stroke of midnight. Because if I had lingered for another second, the way Cinderella's glamour vanished a minute past the hour, you might have realized that there really wasn't much of a big deal about me anyway. Getting back to the shop, I was surprised that my father, who by now had returned, didn't even ask me about my whereabouts. He was instead preoccupied with taking stock of his consignment from Abba, which I saw was a whole lot. My mouth parted in shock as I realized that he had probably taken delivery of over double, if not triple, the normal quantity he would have purchased. I decided to stock up for the next 3 or 4 times in so 4 bakeries come to buy market. My father announced proudly. Apart from the fact that it saves off the stress of making several trips to Abba, I was able to get a big discount by buying a larger quantity. Looking at the floor-to-ceiling stack of sacks of flours and sugar, I knew my mother would never have agreed to this. I also knew that my father has taken another loan to fund this, as his wholesaler would never have released the item to him on credit. But considering we had non-consistent business with the bakery, if it made much economic sense and had a higher payoff, then I reckoned there was no harm in taking the gamble. But that was the least of what preoccupied my thoughts. For the rest of the day and even the week, all I could think about was Anayo. When I closed my eyes, I felt the tenderness of his lip just as vividly as if he was still kissing me. I made sure I went to the shop properly dressed up every day so that I wouldn't be caught unaware again. But as the day turns into a week, which became yet another week and then another, my anxiety grew. I did decided I wasn't worth the trouble after all. Another person who was worried about the bakery's delayed return was my father. He made several attempts to reach Linus, none of which were successful. With hundreds of thousands of naira worth of inventory sitting in our store, any difficulty to offload them was not an option. After almost a month, we finally sighted their van making its way down the street to our shop. Hanoi, our shop assistant yelped, running into the shop in excitement. They are here. Upon hearing that, my father didn't have to ask whom he was referring to. There was only one party whose arrival was worthy of that kind of announcement. He smiled and straightened at the familiar sight of the truck. But to our collective surprise, it wasn't Linus who emerged. Neither was it the dashing Anayo. Instead, approaching our shop was a well-dressed young man, too well-dressed to be an employee. Good afternoon, Mr. Okafor, he said, his tall frame shadowing our doorway. I am from the Triple A Bakery in Asaba. My father nodded. Yes, I recognized the van. Linus didn't come with you. The mouse smiled, but there was no human in his smile. Linus no longer works for us. My name is Adanna and I am the new man in charge. My father owns the bakery. There was something about his smiles that sent an ominous chill down my spine, and from the way my father was fidgeting, I wasn't the only one with a premonition of doom. Mr. Okafor, my father and I agreed to be best for us to give you the news in person, he continued. We will not be purchasing any more items from you. We've been able to find a much cheaper source, and as a businessman, I'm sure you can understand. Eh? My father exclaimed. Ha! Oga, I beg. We've been selling to your father for years. In fact, we have restocked to meet your requirement for the next 3 months. Mr. Okafor, I'm afraid this decision is final. Adanna cut in, his eyes widening to drive home his point. We found out that Linus has been cheating us for years, and he was probably able to get away with it for so long thanks to people like you. Hello? My father exclaimed, his face red. Abomination. Me, Aloysius. Okafor, a cheat. Never. Young man, I might not have money, but one thing I don't joke with is my name. I glared at the spiteful man standing there and insulting my father. He looked to be in his late 20s and was obviously the older half-brother Anayo had told me about. He was just as handsome, if not even more so, but there was nothing likable about him, nothing at all. Be that as it may, we have made alternative arrangements for our supplies. I cannot continue. We are under no obligation to give you any advance notice. Me being here to tell you in person is out of courtesy and respect. Ogabiko, please, my father pleaded, chasing after the man as he walked towards his car. I beg you, I will reduce the price. I will take off my margin. Anything you want. I'm sorry, Mr. Okafor, but this is final. Your company has been blacklisted, he answered. And it was then that he clapped eyes on me. Are you Adanna? Her equal part wanted to punch him in the face for humiliating my father and also to recall into a ball far away from his line of sight. Yes, was all I could manage to say in response. And now you asked me to deliver this to you, he said, an unmistakable smirk on his face as he held an envelope in his hand. As I walked up to him, he practically undressed me with his eyes, and I regretted the effort I'd made in trying to look attractive for Anaya's visit. I hated the fact that the short dress I wore had my full thighs on display and wished I'd opted for any of my unflattering outfits instead. Where is he? I asked as I took the envelope from his hand. He's gone to England, my dear, Adanna answered, his eyes twinkling with amusement. He left last week but asked me to deliver this to you myself. I hope he hasn't broken your heart. England? I had so many questions I wanted to ask, but knew it was not the time.
Oga, please don't blacklist us. Isn't there something we can do? I asked, not fully comprehending what that meant or the impact of this on our business, but knowing that it would be catastrophe for us. He shook his head. Little girl, don't get involved in what you don't understand. Then turning to my father, I said, Good day, Mr. Okafor. It's nice to have finally met you, even under such unpleasant circumstances. We watched in silence as the truck pulled out of the small street, but by the time I turned back to look at my father, his face was ashen. I am finished, Adanna. I took a loan to buy all those things, he said, confirming my fears. 400,000 naira. Your mother is going to kill me. I cringed internally, but opted to be optimistic. They aren't only the customers in the world, Daddy. We'll find other people who can buy them, don't worry. Maybe when I will draw some posters and paste them around, I'm sure we'll find people who will buy. My father simply nodded listlessly before retreating to one of the back rooms. With him gone, and the shop assistants huddled in a corner gossiping about what had just transpired, I opened the letter to read. Adanna, my beautiful Adanna, if you are reading this, it means I'm already in London. Everything happened so fast, and then only just found out plans had been made for me to start school year. I cannot write much as I know the bearer of this letter will most likely read it. I just want to remind you of everything that we discussed and to ask you to wait for me because I'll be waiting for you. Yours forever, Anayo. I felt hot tears spring from my eyes as I realized any hope I had of being with Anayo had been shattered like cheap china. There was no way he would ever want to be with me, not after hobnobbing with beautiful and sophisticated women from all over the world. I had lost him forever. My father did not emerge from his office for the rest of the day, and when he eventually did, it was like he had aged overnight. He didn't say a word to anyone, and I was the one who had to give the shop assistant instructions to close, making the short walk home. He just kept mumbling 400,000 naira. Ebe kago, awu di ego awu. Where am I going to find that kind of money? When we got to our house, he placed his hand on my shoulder. I need to go to the business center to make a phone call. I'll be home soon. I wish I'd been able to understand the hollow feeling I had in my stomach, an obvious premonition of what lay ahead, but I hadn't. Okay, Daddy, is there anything you want me to make for you? I'd already made a pot of egusi soup before leaving the house, but was ready to cook him any delicacy that would lift his mood. He smiled at me. Thank you, my daughter. Anything you make is fine. Jide and I returned from his master's shop shortly after, and both waited for over an hour, not wanting to eat dinner without our father. Ada, I'm hungry, oh. He eventually scowled when it was past 8 p.m. and I had no choice but to serve him. By this time, I was very worried. It wasn't like our father to stay out this late, let alone with his young kids alone at home. After his meal, Jidena was soon fast asleep, and I slid on my slippers to see if I would find our father at the business center. But the moment I opened the door, I saw 3 men standing there, clearly about to knock. I recognized one of them as the operator of the business center. Ike, I was just coming to your place to look for my dad, I said to him, anxiously looking at the faces of the other unfamiliar men. Is there any problem? Ada, please, is your mother around? He asked, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. Ike's voice was one you could typically hear from streets away, especially when it was time to argue over how many minutes has been spent on the phone. She's not. It's just Jidena and I answered before repeating. Is there any problem, Ike? Where is my father? When will she be back? Is there no adult we can talk to? One of the unfamiliar men asked, prompting a glare from me. There is no other person around. My mother has traveled and I am the one in charge. You can speak to me. Ada, he slumped as he was about to leave the business center. The other unfamiliar man answered, what do you mean by slumped? I demanded, my anxiety rising. And how do you even know my name? Ada Habiko, Ike said, reaching for my hand, but I withdrew from him like it was a ball of fire. Even me, as I'm standing here, I don't even know how it is doing me. 1 minute it was harassing me for his change, the next minute, Nala. It just fell to the ground. I was at the business center as well, one of the men said. He made several calls and appeared very upset. Where is he now? Did you take him to the hospital? I asked, my eyes wailing with tears, as even though they hadn't said the words, I already knew. Ada, he is dead, Ike finally said, looking at me with side eyes but making no attempt to hold me again. By the time we rushed him to the clinic down our street, they told us he was already dead. Biko Basieke, please be strong for the sake of your mother. I didn't hear anymore, neither could I be strong any longer. All I remember from that evening is falling to my feet, being held up by the men and being joined by some of our neighbors who heard the noise. It wasn't only my father that died that day, my childhood did as well.